So I hope everyone would agree that over the last few days we've seen some really cool stuff. So we've seen a lot of cool applications, a lot of good things that Accellos has built. So from a WMS perspective, I've been working with the WMS product for quite a while. So I'm looking at it from, at one point, we were the application. We had Radio Beacon, we were the one WMS application, and that was the focus. Now I'm going to show you a few things that we've seen this week from an add-on perspective. All of the different applications that we've seen. We've seen Pulse, we've seen Schedule, we've seen Inspect, and I'll show you how they're going to interact with the WMS so you can actually see how these things are going to work and be able to apply them to any customer who's actually running the WMS right now. You'll see these things as add-ons. So we'll just start with a typical day when we're going to start the receiving process. So when we start and do the receiving process, what Josh showed us yesterday, Josh showed us how to go in and schedule a shipment. So I'll go in and I'll take a look at my location, I'll take a look at my doors. So I have today, I've got a few shipments created, a few appointments created. I've got appointment 14, 11, and 15. One of the things now that we did yesterday, and just to mention how I came up with this was about 6 hours worth of work yesterday. When I was sitting in the back while the other guys were presenting, I was coming up with use cases on how to apply all of the different things that they were showing on top of my application, on top of the warehouse application. I asked 2 questions from 2 of the other product managers, and that's it. So everything else I found was just as intuitive as it could be in order to go and interact with my application. So I've taken my purchase orders from the WMS and I've associated them with these appointments. So I've created a new appointment and I've added my purchase orders to it. What we've done on the right-hand side, you may see, you'll see a stacked bar chart on the right-hand side. So they're going to pop up with some blue, pop up with some orange. What that represents are the estimated time that it's going to take you to receive all of the purchase orders that are associated with that appointment. And the blue is how much you have scheduled. The orange is what you don't have scheduled. This is the time that's missing. So the additional time required is here. So what I've done is I've taken 2 applications, put them on top of my purchase order data. So now if I go and say, okay, appointment 15 is short by 43 minutes. So if I take appointment 15 and let's extend it by 60 minutes. So we've just added an hour to appointment 15. When I go back and I refresh my panel, you'll see appointment 15 is no longer displayed. So this is a very simple way, and this is all in real time. As I drag and create appointments, it's going to be able to estimate how long it's going to take to unload the truck, and therefore, how long do I need for the appointment. So you'll see door 2, appointment 11, I can't finish it without impacting lunch. So what am I going to do? Am I going to tell the driver he has to wait an additional hour? Am I going to tell my staff that they need to stop and keep working on the shipment and delay their lunch? I don't know, but as a manager, I see what I've got. So how do I know how long it should take me to empty the truck? Just wild ass guess? Possibly. I'm using, in this case, the number of lines. So in the WMS, and you'll see how this ties back to our 6263 review, I'm sure everybody knows that in the WMS, in our last version, we created the concept of labor standards. So we can go in and we can define for picks and receipts what our warehouse metrics are. These have nothing to do with actuals. So I'm just saying that I'm expecting my pickers to pick 10 sales orders per hour, 100 lines, 250 units. The same thing on the inbound. How many do I receive? So if I was to change this metric, if I was to say all of a sudden my guys can do 50 lines per hour, you would see on the other side the KPI that shows us how much time we need to unload. That would get adjusted immediately. So all of those things interact with each other. So we have that, like I said, for sales orders, we have that for purchase orders. We can identify which one is the choke point in our facility. So in my case, I'm saying that orders picked per hour is going to be the metric that I care about when I'm doing my calculations. But I could also say, well, no, I do only 1 or 2 orders a day, but they're 10,000 lines. So the lines are the metric that is the most important choke point to me. So that's configurable just for your operation to say which one is the most important.
Just one question. Once I looked at the dashboard that we had in the old one, and there was a calculation that had several orders, and some of them were green, so they were already picked, but they were still taking into account into the calculation of the metric.
Yeah, on the old grid, what that did is base it on the values that were downloaded. So it only based it on your original order had it was one order, 10 lines, 100 units. It didn't reduce it based on what you'd already picked. So if we were going to do something like that, we would probably use a KPI. So we would use something like we have in Pulse to go, so I've got another workspace set up. I've got another workspace in Pulse to show different metrics on this side. So what I've done on this side is I've created outbound metrics. And so again, this is just migrating, it's building on top of mining the WMS data. So I've got pick units per zone, pick orders by zone, pick lines by zone. I don't know which one, again, is going to be important to you, but we provide these all as a standard to say, well, I want to know how many picks I have by zone. This is active. So we've got different kinds of KPIs. As Josh told us, we've got historical ones that can go and report on what was your average pick, and we've got ones that are active. So pick units by zone, as I pick lines, or pick units, you'll see this decrease. So this is all active. The other ones that we've created, and I'll remove a couple of these so that you can see them larger, are the 2 gauges at the top. And the 2 gauges at the top are what I call busyness gauges. And so this is just one number for your picking capacity. So your picking capacity by orders and your picking capacity by lines. So I've just got 2 different ones that are displayed. So you're seeing right now that the gauge on the left shows 48.63. Based on your labor standards that you've defined and your orders that are required based on required date, your warehouse is at 48% capacity. So if my current date ship, I start in the morning, I'm expecting that to be somewhere in the red line, 90 to 100%. I want to make sure I've got enough work for all of my staff. And then as the day goes on, I would expect this gauge to drop off, to say, well, we're done everything that's required today, and it's going to drift back down to the yellow. Same thing on this side, only this metric is based on actual. So where we have our labor standards that can be defined for 10 orders per hour, 100 lines, 10,000 units, I also calculate the actuals. So I know how many orders your warehouse actually picks. So this metric for picking capacity by lines is based on actual. So instead of saying it's the standard, this is based on your RF log activity, how many lines can your pickers process in an hour? When we added the labor standards, we also added a comparison report. So we can compare your standards, which is what you think it should be, versus your actuals. And you can go and compare and see on a real-time basis, did we make a good guess? Do we need to tweak anything for our standards? So again, all of that was introduced in 6.3, which means it's in the versions that you guys all have today. So any questions on scheduling or what we can do interactively to estimate the time?
Can you get us those KPIs? They're cool.
Yeah, Josh will absolutely publish those. Any KPIs that we do, we just include in the next standard release and we can ship them out. So that means you can import these ones in.
But if you need them ahead of time, you can also get them.
No, you can't. Oh, okay, yeah.
Jim, is there a KPI that measures for a date range for performance? Like, you know, one day at a time, if you're trying to figure out how big you guys really are, one day at a time is not helpful, right?
Right, so,
Like, you know, 14 or
yeah, so those are going to be,
gotta go one at a time.
so those will be standard KPIs that we have. So if I want to go and look at the KPIs that we've included for the warehouse. So I've got all of these that were created. So we've got cycle time, download, fill rate, picking, receiving, resource planning. So the resource planning were the ones that I was saying were active. That's going to be based on your open sales orders to try to give you an idea of how much work you have and how many bodies you need to do that work. The rest of them are historical. So the rest of them are for data mining what happened in the past. So let's say I want to do picks. I can say I want to see picked lines by user. So if I say picked lines by user, I go in and I select my type, and now I put in a filter, and now I can do a date range. So I can say that I want to see anything that happened this month, this week, or I can do a custom date range that'll show me everything. So I add it on, it's going to go off and show me all of the lines by user. This is forever. So it's showing me that this guy's picked 300,000 lines. HH's rocked it. So again, you can create any of these that you want. It's all just mining the SQL data that's already there. So I'm not sure how many we have, probably 50, 75 warehouse ones that I've created. 9. And so as each one goes on, I'll just come up with more. So anytime there's another use case like this, I'll include all of these in the standard package that just get deployed. But it's easy to create your own. So now we've got our shipment, the appointment scheduled, the goods arrive at the door. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go in and receive them on the handheld. Everybody recognizes the new, sorry, if I leave it on the screen, they will. Recognizes the new graphical handheld that we introduced in version 6.3. So it uses icons and it uses images, so you can see a lot better, eliminating function keys. So that was, again, something that you guys have today. So we go into receiving, and we're going to go in and we're actually going to receive one of these items. So we go in, we'll enter our purchase order. Let me just grab one that I know I haven't worked with yet. Standard workflow prompts me for the vendor. Is this the purchase order that you want to receive? Yes. And now it's asking me for the external truck temperature. So has anybody ever seen the system prompting you for the external truck temperature before? So is this something that I added into version 6.4? No. This is a user-defined field that can be popped up. User-defined prompts can be added to the system. So again, it's a new configuration that we added. Does anybody know when we added that configuration? 6.3. So in 6.3, we added the ability to add user-defined screens to the picking and the receiving process on the handheld. So we can inject steps into the workflow. So what I've done is I've enabled the first user-defined purchase order header screen. Everything can have validation as well. So I can make sure that whatever I'm entering on the handheld is going to be between a certain range. So that's where you see on this one, it's saying 0 to 200 degrees. Now, hopefully somebody's asking, well, how did you get that screen to show that information when it's just a user-defined screen? It's just a generic screen. So does anybody know how we...
Screen manager custom, is it
Yeah. So what I did is I went in and I customized this screen. So again, 6.3, we added a user-defined, so we added the information to every screen, and I can go in through my screen manager tool. The advantage of the screen manager is you can go in, the screen designer, you can go in and add all kinds of other information. So if you wanted to add graphics to it, if you wanted to add a new button to pop up another screen, all of that's possible through the screen designer. So I'll open my screen designer. Every screen has a unique ID. You'll see this RHUDF1 at the bottom of the screen. That can be turned off if you're not an administrator or if you don't want to use the functions. So I go in and I use RHUDF1, and it shows me that I have 2 versions of this. So it's got a standard that we ship with the product, and then it's got an alternate. So you can't ever go in and overwrite the standard. All you can do is create a copy of it, and then you can keep working with your copy so that you never risk blowing away your system entirely. So in this case, all I've done is I've modified the standard screen, and I've gone in and I've changed some of the text. So I changed the text to say what is the external truck temperature, 0 to 200 degrees, and I can simply do that by changing something here. So if I wanted to change this, as you see, what you see is what you get on this screen, and I can just type whatever I want. So you can move the information around the screen with Screen Designer. If I'm using a graphical handheld, I can change the font color, font style, font size. Can't do that on the Telnet handhelds, but you can still move the information around. So it gives you a lot of flexibility on tailoring the screens to exactly what you want them to be. So what I've done on my screen, so this is just a direct move screen, and I'm not sure if you've ever had customers that said, I wish I could see an image of the product, or I wish I could see additional information on those screens. So on my main screen, I may not need to render it all the time because it's going to take up way too much real estate. I'm still sitting with a screen this size. So what you see in the gray background is the actual size of the handheld. So I can't increase that without using scroll bars. So what I've done is I've added a couple of user-defined fields, user-defined prompts here, buttons that'll create new screens. So I can show any information. So what this is doing is this is going off and looking up in my product master table information that I may not have displayed on the screen. So maybe someone get really creative and think of looking up in another SQL table. Display information from another source that we don't even know of, as long as it's SQL based.
Can you do something like a line graph, so description too long?
The description, when the description gets too long, we actually go in with Screen Designer and we can modify it so you can show 20, 20, 20, whatever length you want it to be. So you do that through the Screen Designer. The other thing I can do is display an image of the product if I'm using a graphical handheld. So I can have that pop up, again, on demand from my direct move screen, on demand from my receiving screens. You receive a new item, it might be flagged to say this item hasn't been cubed. Maybe you want to take a look and confirm that it's the right product. Maybe you want to confirm the packaging or the price labeling that's on it. So you could take images of all those things and have them display on your graphical handheld. So that's what you would be able to do if you didn't have ILS. So let's keep going with our receiving. We haven't actually received anything yet. So the truck is sitting at the door, now we're waiting. We're going to end up getting some retention fines. So we'll go in and we'll receive it, and again, this guy's going to prompt me for the temperature, somewhere between 0 and 200. So I hope that the external truck temperature is going to be less than 100 degrees. That's just what I'm gauging it on. So let's go in and say, well, my external truck temperature is actually 110. Okay, what does that do? For the receiver, doesn't do anything. They're still going to start unloading the truck. But now what's happened, based on a user-defined field that I've added, based on validation that I've added, what should we do with the goods on that shipment? Maybe we should inspect them. So over back in Workspace, if I take a look at my inspection designer, I have a new temperature inspection. And what the temperature inspection is doing is looking for, it's a little small, so this is looking for anyone, in this case, that's greater than 98 degrees. So what it's doing now is it's saying it's greater than 98 degrees, therefore this guy needs inspection. So when I go and I schedule this inspection, so when I go off to my inspection work center, and all of these guys are at the bottom. So I would have this up to be able to go and filter for my temperature inspections, because this is a new one that I have, and now we can see that it's created this guy, it's got an inspection for the purchase order that I was just going in and receiving. So this is going into 101.51. So it's integrated over based on an event that happened on the handheld, user-defined event. Now it's saying create an inspection for it. It'll do it automatically. So that's a good question. So we'll go in and we'll start receiving. So we start receiving my products. Pick any of the one product. So let's say we'll do a World Atlas, and we'll receive one. Now it pops up with a message, and it says, it must be placed in quarantine. So that message was based on the fact that it passed the original 98 degrees, and one of the things that I did, the action, when it goes on hold, I'm going to update my receive details, and I'm going to set the inspection to say, you must inspect every line on this. So now the handheld user knows to take that over to inspection, where somebody's going to go into the inspection work center, and they're going to complete the transaction. Well, it won't force them, so I put it in here. Now I'm going to put it in, so I just put it in a bin. RLJK9999. Doesn't exist. Yes. Okay, so it's done. Take a look at my inventory work center. And if I take a look at my inventory work center, for the guys that I just received, there's my RLJK 9999. And if I take a look over in my reservation, you'll see its I. So the user doesn't have to put it in a special spot. The inventory now has been marked as blocked. It's being inspected. And so because I controlled that based on my inspection that I created, I've got that value. So if I want to link that back to one of my user-defined hold codes, I can do that. So now all of the inventory that I receive for this purchase order, because it's being inspected, is going to be blocked. It's not available for allocation. It can't go on the outbound.
Is there a comment on that too? Like, are you gonna add a comment to
You, in my inspection designer, I just did one column. So I can put any value that I want there. Now, as I go through and I perform the inspection, so I'll just talk about what the other actions are going to be. So I perform the inspection. If it passes, then I want to free up the inventory. So I update my inventory for anything that I have on hold and say, okay, the inventory is okay, it's good to go. So I go through with my questions with my internal truck temperature. Is there visible damage? And is there visible spoilage? So those are the questions that I created for my inspection for this guy. So if these guys go, you'll see I've got a couple that passed, and then I've got some that failed. So I've got other inspections that failed. As I go through and do my inspection, one of the other things we might want to do, because the truck came in, and especially if I'm in a 3PL, the truck came in and the temperature was too high. I have to do an inspection. Should we charge our client for that? I think it would be a good thing to charge our client for that. So we can go, and that's the inspection type. Let me go back to warehouse. I created a transaction, and I created two new transactions. One, whether it passed, one, whether it failed inspection. Maybe you want to charge them different rates, whether it passes or fails. So after I'm done my inspection, I'm going to create an entry in our RF log file, which is where all my billing transactions get created, and that's going to kick off to bill. So from a seemingly simple answer to what is the outside truck temperature, all of these other events are falling into place. And so all of the other applications are triggering off things that happen based on turning on that one prompt in receiving. So let's say an inspection does fail. So one of the things is going to be wrong. So either my internal truck temperature, is there visible damage, or visible spoilage. So I'll go take a look at my receipt work center. This was one of the guys. It was, before I lost it, one of the guys, 10167-1. So this was one of the ones that we inspected, and if we take a look at our log, you'll see this is one of the ones that we inspected because it's got an inspect 3 message, which was the message that says we failed. Does anybody else notice anything on this from one of the sessions we saw yesterday? It's got something under the dock, which means I failed my inspection. I went out, I took a picture of the damage, and there's my damaged carton. So I've got that associated with my receipt. So it failed. I've got a stamp now of why we think it failed. And again, the receiver is just receiving goods. All they're doing is unloading the truck to make sure that everything gets off in time. Any questions on?
You may have covered this again, so I apologize. On the inspections, you said you have a library where you set up a series of questions? Yes or no? And then you set up a library of questions, and can you assign them to each items, or is it just to?
So you create an inspection that could be based on orders, inventory, anything. So it's independent of the WMS. So you could inspect anything SQL, Oracle, MySQL based. You can set it up so that I check my header, and if anything fails, I can create children. So let's say that you wanted to look at the internal truck temperature, look at the header. That fails, you go to the detail and say, I want to look at every received detail line that's associated with that. So it's however granular you want it to be on those. And unlimited questions, unlimited children. You can make these things as complicated as you ever want to.
And you can't export and import any other screen.
You can export and import, yeah.
So what is the stuff going to be?
It's right here. Yeah, it's in my hands now. Aren't they going through that next door? When you can actually have it versus when you see it? The only other thing that I wanted to show you guys, I don't want to keep you guys all day. Let's take a look at orders by client. So I've got 3 orders that are sitting in rating for NBN. And of course my grid reset. So I lost. I sent these ones over to Optimize. And so what Optimize did is it gave me a truck route and a truck stop. So it's taken these orders, puts them way over to the side. So it came back and said that these guys can all fit on a single truck, and these are the truck stops that are going to be associated with each one. So obviously there's going to be a sequence of them. So I want to show you the new staging functionality that we introduced. This was either in 6.2 or 6.3. And so this was something that came up earlier as far as loading a truck. So we've got a load truck function. So the truck arrives, the truck is going to have an ID. So in this case, it's going to be truck 02. It's whatever assignment your carrier gives you. So you load the truck. So I enter my truck, so don't know if you can scan the side of a truck if they have that, or the driver has paperwork, whatever it's going to be to identify that this is, in fact, the route that it's going on. And now the system's going to prompt me for every carton that's associated with the orders. So now it's asking me, your current order is 102062. That's the one we need to scan. When I was doing this earlier, I was picking the orders, so it came up and said, the order you need to do is not ready. You can't continue. You can't continue with the load. Why is it selecting this guy? Because this guy is truck stop 3. So that's going to be the one that's in the back of the truck. So it's going to prompt me to scan every carton. So this was something that we did, like I said, I think it was 6.2 or 6.3. And historically, we didn't have good visibility after an order was picked. So after the order was picked, we knew it went out the door. But we didn't know where exactly is this box. So we added some functionality to let you assign a staging bin and stage the cartons. So we knew at the end that this carton's in staging lane 1, this carton's in staging lane 2. We've got validation to say whether an order can be split between staging lanes, whether a staging lane can contain multiple orders. So all of that is configurable. But the big idea was we want to make sure that we know where the boxes are between the time the picker closes them and the shipper puts them on the truck. So we added that functionality, and now we combine it with the load truck functionality, where it's an interactive process. It prompts them to do them in the right sequence. If you miss one, it won't let you continue. And it knows how many boxes it has for each one of the orders.
If you put it on a pallet or it's like or a license plate, can you just scan the entire pallet into the truck?
So if you take all of your unit pick and pack cartons and put them onto a pallet, then the pallet is the thing that you stage and ship.
And then that's what you scan.
That's what you would scan at this point, yeah.
Would you create a license plate label or just another carton label for pallet, for pallet label, I guess?
Yeah, if you're using the add to pallet functionality, so that was existing functionality here, add to pallet, you need a pallet ID license plate in order to do that. So you would then scan your pallet and use that as the object that you're scanning onto the truck. Yeah, so you could inject a step into the picking process. So we didn't talk about when you could do this. So we can inject steps in picking and receiving when you're adding it to your wave, immediately after you start picking or receiving, or after you do every item. So after I receive every item or pick every item, I can actually put more prompts in there. So if you think that they're being too efficient, we could add something in to say, hey, let's add another step. But like you say, because I've got validation on it, I can do anything from here, including update one of our database tables.
It's not included against the database.
You would validate it and then put it in. So as all one step, you would make sure that what you wanted was good, and if what you wanted was good, then as a second step of the same. Any other questions or comments on any of this stuff? That's about all I was going to show.